Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about the 10 best indie horror movies of 2024. Before we get into this, there's two things I want to mention. One, this is my list, so I'd love to hear what yours are down in the comments, but just keep that in mind. This is not the right list, just simply my list. The other thing I want to mention is this is a list of the best indie horror movies. This isn't what I think are the best overall horror movies of the year. I'll talk about that in a couple weeks. But this is a list of the best independent horror movies that came out in 2024, at least in my opinion. But with that, let's get to the list.
As I've always believed, there's nothing that can't be explained.
Oddity is a 2024 supernatural horror movie, written and directed by Damian McCarthy. It stars Carolyn Bracken, Gwilym Lee, and Tank Murphy. The story's about a blind medium who tries to uncover the truth behind her sister's death with the help of her psychic abilities.
Why do you want it?
He took my sister's life. I want to see what was going through his mind.
This was one of the biggest surprises this year. I didn't expect anything going into this, which is part of, I think, why I am so high on this movie. Because I know I've mentioned it and recommended it in the past, and I've had different people mention that they didn't think it was that great, that it was okay, but they expected it to be much better than it was based on my reaction to it. But you got to keep in mind, one, I saw this in a theater, and two, I saw it without any expectations. I hadn't heard anyone mention it. I didn't know anything about it. Hadn't even seen a trailer, if I remember correctly. And so just going in totally blind, this movie really hit me because it's creepy. It has some fantastic imagery and goes in some really weird, interesting directions. And even though I wouldn't say it's the most original horror movie, it does a lot of the same things we've seen before. It's the way it's set up. It's the way it's put together. It's the way it's directed and edited, the mood, the atmosphere. That's the things about this movie that make it really work, in my opinion. I'm also a big fan of Damian McCarthy's other movie. It's called Caveat, and it's also available right now on Shudder. So if you haven't seen that one, I think it's a great double feature with this. Either way, I think this movie is fantastic and definitely deserving of being on this list.
Consider yourself lucky.
Cuckoo is a 2024 sci-fi horror thriller, written and directed by Tillman Singer. It stars Hunter Schafer, Dan Stevens, and Jessica Henwick. A 17-year-old girl is forced to move with her family to a resort where things are not what they seem.
Why is there nobody working the reception after 10?
I want you to lock the doors and wait for me. I will come pick you up right now.
This is a very strange one and absolutely not one for everyone. I know for a fact there's going to be a number of people that comment on this video saying Cuckoo was trash and whatnot. But that's what I love about this movie, is that it's polarizing, it's different, it's unique, it's not going to work for everyone. It's very strange and uncomfortable and does things in a really creative, artistic way with a different type of feel to it, so that's always going to be divisive. But I love that strangeness. I'm a huge fan of movies that do things in an odd way, and that's a perfect descriptor for this movie. It's just odd. I think Hunter Schafer is incredible in this, gives a really powerful, emotional, real feeling performance. And as much of a sci-fi thriller horror movie that it is, it's also a mystery. There's a lot of this old school kind of gumshoe whodunit element to it that I thought was a lot of fun as well. But it looks great. It's really well shot with a lot of really unique camera angles and interesting editing choices. I found this to be a very refreshing, entertaining movie and definitely one of my favorites this year. I want to thank today's sponsor, MyHeritage, which is the leading global family history and DNA service. The DNA test is what I did, and it's really easy. It takes like 2 minutes. You just quickly swab your mouth, and you put the tip of the swab into a container that they provide, put it in an envelope, mail it out, and bam, you're done. And a few weeks later, you get the results. So I waited for you guys to do this live. I want you guys to see my actual genuine reaction to the results. It's really interesting because I was always told growing up that I had Native American in me, German, Irish, Scottish, various French, things like that. So I'm very excited to click this button right now. And I've been waiting a few weeks for this, so I'm super excited. Here we go. All right, so it's 89.3% North and West European, 7% East European, and 3.1% English. So basically, totally Caucasian. I'm just all in this one little isolated area. It's pretty wild. So there goes all the Native American talk, or any of the other talk for that matter. I mean, it's all pretty clear. I'm just in this one area. But it's so cool because it shows you who else you might be related to. You can connect with people through a family tree if you choose to sign up for that. But it shows me having over 14,000 DNA matches. So I could find long lost relatives, things like that. And like I said, you can look up your family tree if you sign up for that. There's all kinds of things you can do with your DNA connections, but it's all very safe. MyHeritage is committed to your safety and will never sell or license out your private genetic data. So you can feel comfortable knowing that they're not, gonna take advantage of you. But this is really exciting to me to finally see what I truly am DNA wise. And you can click on the QR code that's on your screen right now for their latest promo, or go to the link in the top pinned comment down below. But also at checkout, if you use the code GHOST, you'll get free shipping. But once again, I want to give a huge thank you to MyHeritage for sponsoring today's video. Terrifier 3 is a 2024 Christmas slasher horror movie. Written and directed by Damien Leone, it stars David Howard Thornton, Lauren Rivera, and Elliot Fulham. Art the Clown is set to release chaos on the unsuspecting residents of Miles County as they peacefully drift off to sleep on Christmas Eve.
What goes through your brain when he's close enough to you? You feel his breath.
This movie was so much fun. I just love the world that Damien Leone has created because it's brutal and vicious and very gory and bloody, but at the same time, it's very funny. Now, not everyone is even going to see that humor. I think it's a certain twisted type of mind that's going to see the humor in it. But I honestly think these movies are just hilarious. And it's been wild the last few years watching Art the Clown rise up to being considered right there with Michael and Jason and Freddy. It's really amazing to see. And I called it. After I saw the first one and heard that they were making a sequel, I knew that he was going to explode. I told everybody that would listen, I'm telling you, Art the Clown is one of the next great horror icons. And a lot of people laughed at me, but then when Terrifier 2 made like 10 million on a tiny little budget, everybody started taking notice. And now this movie that just crossed over $100 million. It's wild when you think about how small of a production and how it really is a family that puts together these movies. And David Howard Thornton is just incredible as Art the Clown. He is so charismatic, so full of energy, and you never even think about that he doesn't talk because there's so much going on with just his physical performance. But you also got to mention how much of an amazing final girl Lauren Rivera has become. In these last two movies, she's really impressed the hell out of me, and I love to see that she's starting to get opportunities outside of the Terrifier world because she's gorgeous. But something that a lot of people don't realize is she does a lot of her own stunts. She has a background at doing stunt work, and she's also a black belt in martial arts. Like, this is a very, very talented lady. And Elliot Fulham is a great follow on YouTube. He posts videos as well. He's great on Instagram, just a really likable person. So I love to see all of them succeeding. But I just love the way they make Christmas look in this movie and how fun it is, how festive and holiday, yet they don't shy away at all from the gore or brutality. I think this movie is genius and a definite must-see this year. Mads is a 2024 French horror thriller. Directed by David Moreau, it stars Lucille Golem, Laurie Pavey, and Milton Reach. A teenager who stops off to see his dealer to test a new drug before heading off for a night of partying. But on his way home, he picks up an injured woman, and the night takes a surreal turn. Here's another one that I thought was so refreshing, so unique, and definitely a must-see. Because it has this infected or zombie element about it, but the way it's shot, the way it's put together, it's all one take, and so it makes it feel so exciting, so frenetic, because it's constantly coming at you and never stops. And it continually ramps up, because it starts out kind of mundane, but then pretty quickly on, like within a few minutes, it starts going and it never slows down, but instead it continually builds the tension and anxiety and intensity. And when I talk about the best movies of the year, being unique and having something that separates you from other movies from recent memory, that goes a long way for me. But beyond being unique, it's also really expertly put together. It's well directed, well edited, well shot. All of those things stand out as well. So if you haven't seen this one yet, do yourself a favor and check this one out.
Who are you hiding from?
You'll Never Find Me is a 2023 Australian horror movie, written and directed by Indiana Bell and Josiah Allen. It stars Brendan Rock, Jordan Cohen, and Elena Karpaitis. A strange and lonely man lives in a mobile home park, and during a violent storm, a mysterious woman appears at his door, seeking shelter from the elements.
I'd really need a lift into town.
I'll take you there when the weather lets up.
So every time I make one of these best of the year videos and I mention the date of a movie, people always get confused and are like, you said it was the best of 2024. Why did you then say a movie is from 2023? So I figured I would explain it before we move on. That's the date that a movie was first released. Generally, it's released into a limited, maybe into film festivals, things like that. But that's not the date of its wide release. So a movie like this, it came out in Australia and was in different film festivals last year, but it wasn't released widely to where everybody really could see it until this year. And a lot of times, like a little indie movie like this one, it'll come out to different film festivals trying to get distribution. And so Shudder, in this case, picked it up and released it on their platform. But the rest of the world, none of us could really see it until this year when Shudder released it. And so I'm not going to include a movie on the best of the year list when it can't be seen yet. But I think this movie is amazing. There's not a lot I could say about it because it's very mysterious. There's some really unique things that happen in this, and it's easy to spoil because if you know kind of what's going on here, it ruins it. But it's moody and atmospheric, really well written, well performed. It looks fantastic. It's a very small movie, all takes place in just this one house. But it doesn't feel boring. It is a bit of a slow burn and a dialogue movie, but there's a lot of dread and a lot of anxiety that's just packed into this, so it doesn't feel slow or boring. But it's a real shame how little this movie has been talked about. It really is flying under the radar. And so I keep talking about it on this channel, hoping that more people will check it out because I really do believe it's one of the best this year.
I'll be waiting.
Longlegs is a 2024 crime horror thriller. Written and directed by Osgood Perkins, it stars Micah Monroe, Blair Underwood, and Nicolas Cage. In pursuit of a serial killer, an FBI agent uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve to end his terrifying killing spree.
I saw a beast rise up out of the sea with 7 heads and 10 horns. And on his horns he wore 10 crowns.
This is another movie like Oddity that unfortunately a lot of people just had their hopes way too high, their expectations out of control because of the marketing, the viral marketing that was done with this. It was really well marketed. Like they did a great job of doing what they needed to do to try to get people to go see it, to build the hype, and that's great. But it also is bad because it ruins any chance of people going into it like I did, mostly blind and not having any real expectations for it. Because I think this movie is brilliant, but it's just not the kind of movie for everyone, and it got a much wider audience than really it ever should have, especially when it was being compared to Silence of the Lambs and Seven, which were both big mainstream type of movies, and this is not that. This is a neon release. It's an indie horror movie, so it's going to be very divisive, very, mixed opinions on this, because that's the kind of movie that it is. It's weird, it's strange, it's uncomfortable, it's oddly written. The performances, especially Micah Monroe, the way she's acting, there's a reason behind it, but it's very stilted and odd, and everything in this just has an odd, interesting choice because it's that creative, kind of artistic art house type of movie. But I had a great time with this movie. I've seen it many times, and every time I watched it, there's a different layer to it and different things that I uncover and think about. And I love movies like that really make me think about them, and that when I walk out, I don't have everything I am gonna get from a movie, but instead, on repeat viewings, you kind of start to really build what this movie is actually doing and saying, what actually happens here. But I think even if this wasn't your cup of tea, you could still admit that it's well put together. It's well shot, well edited, well directed. The performances are really, really good. It just may not be something that you enjoy. And beyond that, Osgood Perkins, the style of film that he makes just isn't for everyone. I personally really appreciate his style, the way he makes movies look, the color grade, all those things that he puts into movies, the ambiance, the atmosphere, just the style overall, I think is fantastic. He's just the kind of filmmaker that I'm always excited to see what he does next. So in my opinion, on every level, this is absolutely one of the best independent horror movies this year.
Got a surprise for you.
Milk and Cereal is a 2024 found footage horror movie. Written, directed, and starring Curry Barker. It also stars Cooper Tomlinson and Adley Alvarado. A surprise birthday prank takes a turn for the worse when a popular social media duo must face the reality of the terrifying aftermath.
You should go see what's downstairs.
Why?
Because somebody is down there.
Don't fucking worry.
I think it's wild because after watching this movie, as much as any movie this year, it's lingered in me. And as time went by and the more I thought about it, the higher and higher and higher this movie rose on my best of the year list. Because there's a lot that I took into consideration with this, because it's made by YouTubers. They really made this on basically no money with just some friends and put it out on their YouTube channel. And so as well done as it is, how effective it is, how much it impacted me and made me think about it long after the fact, it just got under my skin and stuck with me, that says something. But even if you put all that aside, this movie's unique. It's got a very strange, uncomfortable vibe about it that feels very real and is easy to get consumed by and just really get into the story and forget that you're watching a movie. And in a day and age where we have so many found footage movies out there, it's hard to do that, in my opinion, with the found footage space now. But I think the fact that this is made with actual friends, with a real group of people that all know and care about each other, it lends to be kind of similar to what we saw with the movie Host back in 2020. It just has that real authentic feel about it. And it's wild, I see all these movies with these massive budgets all the time, and the dialogue in these movies is so poorly written, it doesn't feel real whatsoever. But then in a tiny little thing like this, it feels completely real, very authentic. Everything happening feels natural and not phony or written or fake. But this has some wild twists, takes some big swings, goes in some really interesting directions, and very much surprised me. But beyond all of that, this movie is genuinely creepy. But I'm not gonna spoil it and say why I think it's so creepy, because I know a lot of people still haven't seen this. But if you have yet to check this one out, it's free on YouTube, and it's one that I highly recommend.
How did I get so lucky tonight?
Strange Darling is a 2023 horror thriller. Written and directed by J.T. Molnar, it stars Willa Fitzgerald, Kyle Gallner, and Barbara Hershey. Nothing is what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree.
Are you a serial killer?
What did you just say?
I knew basically nothing about this movie going in. And I was able to see this a little bit early at an advanced screening where after the movie was over, you got to watch some interviews with the director and Willa Fitzgerald. And so that gave it a little bit of context and things beyond the movie. But I was just floored by this movie. It's gorgeously shot. It's shot on actual film and it shows the color, the real depth and the way that it's shot is just fantastic. It's a real nail-biter that keeps you on the edge of your seat. And the way that it's edited together, it keeps you guessing too because it's done in chapters, but they're all out of order. And so you're guessing for quite a while on what is actually happening here because this movie isn't what it seems on the surface. There are some surprises and twists along the way. And then the cast is fantastic in this. I'm a big fan of Kyle Gallner. I really enjoy him in everything I see him in. So I was excited to see him in another movie. I watched him not too long ago in Passengers last year, and that movie is great and not enough people talk about it. But this movie, I saw that he was in it, so I was looking forward to that. But the big surprise here is Willa Fitzgerald. I wasn't familiar with her at all. I just went into this kind of blind, not having any clue who she was. And I was just absolutely blown away at what a performance she gives here. It is definitely one of the best performances this year, without a doubt. It's intense, it's emotional, the things that she goes through and all the different things that happen to her character in this movie, it's just so impressive the way she just dives into this character and becomes this character. So not only is this well performed, well shot, well edited, just well done on every level, it's also a lot of fun and an absolutely fantastic thrill ride that is definitely worth taking. Heretic is a 2024 psychological horror movie, written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods. It stars Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East. Two young religious women are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in the house of a strange man.
We just need to go home.
I won't keep you if you wish to leave. But I want you to choose which door to go through based on your faith.
So this was one of the highest on my list of movies I was looking forward to this year. Not only is it A24, and I generally like their movies, but just the look of it. There is such a mystery about it. When I saw the trailer, I just couldn't wait. And so this is one that I kind of did have high expectations for. But I think it not only met my expectations, but surpassed it because it is so well written. I think it's the best written movie this year. The dialogue, the conversations, the back and forth, everything is so well thought out. There's a lot of research that had to be done to do what they do in this. So I grew up with a bunch of Mormons, and some of my best friend to this day are Mormon. And I have nothing but love for them as people. But I do have my issues with religion. I don't have a problem with anybody believing whatever they want to believe, but for me personally, I kind of take issue with it, and I don't agree with a lot of the things. But I love that this movie didn't just straight up attack it. There are different sides to this movie and a lot of different ways you can take it by the end on what it's trying to say. And I think that that is really impressive because it could have just gone in the direction of just dumping on religion and basically saying, hey, if you're religious, you're wrong and all that. It could have easily have done that, but it doesn't. And I know there are some people that came away from it thinking that that was the case, but I really don't think that. I mean, I feel like it's all about your perspective and what you think this movie is trying to say. I personally think it had a really fair viewpoint and just kind of showed it from both sides. But even if you push all that aside, it's just a fantastic ride. It's thrilling, it's exciting, it's super intense. It gets gross and uncomfortable. It's also gritty and atmospheric, super moody and creepy. The set design, the costume design, everything about this is meticulously put together. And one of the reasons I was excited to see this is because the guys that made this are the same ones that that made the movie Haunt. And I think that's one of the best hidden gem Halloween time of year horror movies out there. I think it's really exciting because as much as I love that movie, this is very different. So it's not like they can only make one style of movie. They also wrote A Quiet Place. So that just shows you how talented these guys are. And then the cast, Hugh Grant is incredible as a villain. And Sophie Thatcher is fantastic. I knew about her going into this, so I knew that she's like one of these up and coming actresses that I'm a big fan of. But I had no idea who Chloe East was, so I was super blown away at just what an amazing performance she gives in this. So as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of this movie. It's one of those rare movies that there's nothing I would change about it. But there was one independent horror movie this year that I did put above it. The Substance is a 2024 body horror movie. Co-produced, written, and directed by Courtney Fergit. It stars Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, and Dennis Quaid. A fading celebrity decides to use a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself.
The Substance.
I'm Sue.
So every year, if we're lucky, we get that one horror movie that is just above everything else. It's just that gold standard level of horror movie. Last year, it was When Evil Lurks. And to me, in my opinion at least, this year, it's without a doubt The Substance. Because it does everything right. It's well written. It's well directed. The performances are incredible. But beyond all of that, it's super unique and original and refreshing. I mean, sure, there are movies that it takes inspiration from. You could see a little bit of Death Becomes Her in this. You could see elements from Society. You could see inspiration from filmmakers like Frank Henenlotter, and the list goes on. But it does its own thing. It's so stylish and colorful. It's funny, but also disturbing. It's thought-provoking and creepy. It really does check off all those boxes of what makes a great horror movie. Because I didn't find myself laughing as hard in any other movie this year as I did in this, and yet at the same time, in a blink of an eye, something would happen where I would feel almost like crying, like super sad moments. It's just creepy as all hell. It gets under your skin, and after you've seen it, you can't help but continually think about it. And even after multiple viewings of this movie, I was still impressed every time I watched it with just how well done it is in every single way. I mean, talk about body horror. The practical effects are incredible in this. Stuff that you just don't see done anymore, especially on this level. It shows you that, yeah, CGI is continually getting better over time, but practical effects have as well. And you see some of the things they do in this, even though, sure, some of it's funny and playful, there's also some things in this that are generally disturbing and creepy. But the performances from Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, as well as Dennis Quaid, are just incredible. I mean, you expect that from Hollywood royalty like Dennis Quaid and Demi Moore, but Margaret Qualley, she held her own. Her performance in this was incredible as well, and she's an up-and-comer. She really is rising quickly. And Courtney Fergit, the filmmaker of this, I just cannot wait to see what she does next. She did another movie a couple years ago called Revenge that I've been raving about and telling everybody about for a long time. Just her stylish filmmaking, the way she puts together movies is very much one of a kind. So when I was putting a list together of the best independent horror movies of 2024, there was no doubt in my mind that The Substance was my number one. But I would love to hear down in the comments, what are your picks for best independent horror movies this year? And I also want to give a huge thank you to MyHeritage for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to get over to MyHeritage and take advantage of the 30-day free trial as well as free shipping while you can. And I also want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean so much to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or you can become a channel member by clicking on the join button down there and help support the channel that way. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And if you enjoyed this, click right here to watch me talk about 10 more horror movies that I think you'll enjoy. And I'll see you guys next time.